Hi guys, this is the latest update on the EverReady N3 chassis, and as you can see I pretty much rewired it completely and I changed all the parts, all the capacitors and all the resistors, and even, as you can see, one of the tube sockets. Now, why did I do that? Well, maybe for a couple of reasons. First of all, I measured out a few of the parts which I took out of the chassis, and the parts were horribly off. They were off by a wide margin, much more than the tolerance they were rated at. So I estimated that if 2 or 3 parts would be off by quite a margin, then probably they would all be off. There was one part though I liked because of its let's say its show factor, and that is the one and only electrolytic inside the chassis, and that's this one. As you can see, it's an 8 microfarad electrolytic rated for 150 volts, which is quite a lot if you remember, because the high voltage battery which was used in this radio was supposed to be 90 volts. So, well, this capacitor is certainly over-dimensioned on that point. But okay, I guess maybe they did it because they had it on hand, or perhaps they thought a little bit of margin wouldn't hurt. Now, one of the reasons why I didn't leave it in the radio is this. As you can see, this is the date this capacitor was produced, November 54. Now, today is November 2013. So this capacitor is almost 60 years old. Wow. Now, well, if the other capacitors measured quite badly, then I'm quite certain an electrolytic will measure just as bad. So I took it out. I'll keep it as a memento. Then, another peculiarity I noticed when I started working on this radio is this kind of capacitor. I don't know exactly what type it is, but I suspect it's a paper capacitor, and it's coated in I'd guess either paraffin or perhaps wax. Now, when they made this capacitor, as you can see, they coated it in paraffin, and you see printing on the capacitor. Now, I can tell you this: the printing you see is printed on the wax. It's not like it's printed on the capacitor and then there's a layer of wax above it. No, it's actually printed on the paraffin itself. How stupid can you be? When you heat up this component to solder it onto the chassis or into the chassis, the paraffin starts to melt. Now, obviously, if you're going to print something on paraffin which melts, well, you can imagine the result. Anyway, it measured badly. This is supposed to be 50 picos, and it measured something like 90. So, and as you can see, the tolerance mentioned on the capacitor is 10%. So it was badly off, down the hatch. Alright, another peculiarity is that if you remember, the chassis was covered in some very nasty cadmium powder-like oxidation. And I cleaned off the chassis, and when I was done, I thought that I would protect the metal of the chassis with some clear coating, with lacquer. Now, for some mysterious reason, the clear coat lacquer reacted with the chassis, and as you can see, it's pretty ugly. It bubbles up. It became all intransparent, even yellowish. So I have to take it off and start all over again with a different kind of clear coat lacquer, unfortunately, but well, this is part of the learning curve. As it stands, it's pretty much rewired, and all the parts except one has been changed, and the only part that's left for me to do is this one paper cap here. Once this one has been changed, then all the parts on the chassis have been replaced. What I'll do then next is give all the electrical contacts, like this one, like this switch, or let me see if I can find it. Here it is. Or this power switch. I'll give it those switches a good cleaning, and if I need to repair them, I'll repair them, obviously. Then what's left to do is to check the whole wiring from left to right with the schematic at hand, to see that to check whether I didn't make any mistakes. And then, well, then it's all about remounting everything and then finishing the box in which it was built in. Now, I've got one more problem. Well, it's not exactly a problem, it's more like an annoying detail. As you can see, the audio transformer is coated in with some very ugly black stuff. Now, don't ask me what this stuff is. It could be a kind of tar, or maybe something which some of you call liquid tape. But whatever it is, it's extremely ugly. Man, I mean, I'm not that particular on the looks of things, but really, this is terrible. Now, it came like this, and I think, well, I think this was done in the factory. The reason why I think this was done in the factory is because there's a part number or something like that printed over the black. So I don't think anyone who would have repaired this or tried to insulate it or whatever would have printed in white lettering something over it. So what got into the heads of those people at the factory, I don't know. Now, temporarily, just to test the chassis, I'm going to leave it in. But if I can find a transformer which looks nicer, I think I'll change it. So, well, that's it, guys. As you can see, the progress is good. The next thing I'll be doing now is reconnect the tuning capacitor, which I also cleaned, and the brand apparently is Polar. So I cleaned it as best as I could, and I'm going to mount it back onto the chassis and then reconnect it. And well, then I'll reassemble the other parts, you know, like the IF can covers and all that. And then, unfortunately, you'll have to wait a little bit longer until I can do a test to see whether I made a successful repair or not. And probably, well, most likely, the radio will need an alignment too. So, well, maybe not next part, but the part after that will be about trying to make this radio run. Oh yeah, and one more detail. I need a 90 volts battery to run this thing. Obviously, those batteries, well, aren't for sale any longer, so I'll have to find something to make this radio run. So we'll see. Maybe by next time or the time after that, I'll be able to make the radio work. So stay tuned, and I hope you enjoyed the view of this EverReady N3 chassis restored. So until next time, bye bye. Okay guys, this is just a very short update. So there you go, all the parts are back into the chassis, or onto the chassis. This is the variable capacitor, you know, to be used for tuning. And as you see, it rolls very well back and forth. So yeah, I even changed the capacitor with the one which was left on the IF coil, the right one. So literally all the parts are now officially changed. So this chassis has been officially renovated. Now I still need to check all the connections and all the parts to see whether they are all attached properly and connected properly. I also need to have a look at this transformer, whether, well, it's still functional and all that, but I think it is. But I want to see if I can do something about its looks. And well, from now on, the work to be done is really aligning the chassis or the radio, mounting it back, mounting everything back, cleaning it, painting it, you name it, and then, well, you know, generally testing it and seeing whether we can make it run. So that's it for now. So stay tuned for an update on progress. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye bye.